It's all right. So we'll move along. So let's see. Okay, what's next? So now we're going to talk about something having to do with lines. One of the things that you probably heard and you remember having to do with lines has to do with the slope of lines. The slope is just a ratio. That's all it is. And it's a ratio of how much something goes up and up or down to how much something goes left or right. And so it's the rise over the run. It's the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. So by numeric definition, that's what we use. But physically, it's the rise over the run. If anybody's ever traveled in the mountains before, I'm trying to think where some of you guys are from. I've seen some of your stuff on there. But even if you've traveled like in Tennessee or in Arkansas, you don't even have to have gone too far. Sydney, I don't think y'all have any mountains in Wisconsin. I don't remember. But I think it's kind of like Mississippi. It's kind of flat. But if you've traveled in the mountains, you've seen maybe signs that talk about it's maybe a 5% grade on this hill, and so you need to be careful. Or maybe a 2% grade, or heaven forbid if it's like a 20% grade, that would be horrible. But anyway, that's a measure of slope. Okay, so what that's saying is that for every foot it goes up or down, or foot it goes up, it's going to rise over so many feet. Okay, so that's what a slope is. So a slope is telling us the steepness of something. So in terms of real world, it's really telling us how steep something is going to be. So when we talk about slopes of lines, one of four different things can happen. And I want to talk about these last two down here first. Okay, so the last two things over here are the slope of 0 and a slope which is undefined. So a horizontal line, and that was, I'm going to backtrack here real quick. Here was my horizontal line, okay? It doesn't rise up at all, okay? It has a rise of 0. And so if it has a rise of 0, sorry, I just dropped my pen. If it has a rise of 0, then that means that 0 over some number, we know that a fraction of 0 over number is the number 0. So we can have 0 on the top of a fraction and we get 0. So a horizontal line has a slope of 0. My vertical line, on the other hand, is the one that goes up and down. And so we're going to look at that. That's this one right here. It rises and rises and rises and rises, but it doesn't run. It doesn't go side to side at all. So in terms of my definition of rise over run, my vertical line is some number over 0. And we talked about this the other day. So 0 on the top of a fraction over a different number is 0, but a number over 0 is undefined. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's some very special circumstances. One way I try to help students remember is that the word horizontal has two O's in it, and that goes with the 0 slope. Okay, vertical, so that one's a little bit harder, but if you think about alphabetically, U and V come together in the alphabet. So U and V are right next to each other. So undefined goes with vertical, and the horizontal with all those O's has a 0 slope. Okay, so 0 slope horizontal, undefined slope is vertical. Now you do have to remember that undefined is the 0 in the bottom. Okay, but you got this. I think I'm very excited. I think y'all can do this. Okay, so what about these other two? Positive slope and negative slope. Okay, so we have lines that can do other things. They either go up or they go down. Okay, so if you're looking at this equation from left to right as you look at your graph, and so I'm going to backtrack back here to this one. As I read this graph from left to right, that's how you read. This line is going up. Okay, so that line has a positive slope. Okay, so it's a line that's going up like this. So that means the only thing we have left to do is one which goes down. And so that's one that has a negative slope. Okay? So we have positive slope, negative slope, 0 slope, and undefined. And so we're going to put all of this stuff together. Okay? Formula, you need to know this formula. Very important. Okay? formula, difference in the y's, difference in the x's. Just got to be careful. Make sure you put those in order. All right? Okay, let's do this. Okay, so first things first. Find the slope of the line that passes through these 2 points. I would highly recommend that you either color code these or you label these, okay? So I'm going to color code and label. So here is my x1 and my x2. It doesn't matter which order they're in. It matters which one is x, okay? Here is my y1 and here is my y2, okay? And so I want to find the slope. So I'm going to use the formula, and the formula says that I take y2, which is 5, minus y2, which is 5, minus y1, which is 10, over x2, which is 5, minus, be careful, negative 11 is my x1, okay? 5 minus 10 is negative 5, and 5 plus negative 11, because that's what happens, 5 plus 11, 5 minus a negative 11 is 5 plus 11, gives me 16. And so my slope is negative 5/16. And that's it. Now, I am going to remind you, so on your quizzes, on your homework, on your test, you are welcome to use a calculator to do some of the arithmetic. I don't want you to make a careless mistake when you're just trying to work numbers and make a careless mistake in the arithmetic. So I would rather you use a calculator on those and get those numbers part right. So just know that you are allowed to use a calculator on your homework and quizzes and tests. So preferably not a graphing calculator, but that's not going to help you a lot. Questions. Okay. So let's find the slope of the next two. So again, I'm just going to label these. Here's my x1 and my x2. And here are my 2 y values, my y1 and my y2. Again, it really doesn't matter what order as long as I am consistent. So, but I'm going to try to use the formula and stay consistent with this formula. So I have negative 19 minus negative 17. And then in the denominator, the difference. Now notice I use negative 19 for my first y value, so I have to use negative 18 for my first x value. That's what I mean by being consistent, minus this negative 13. Just for the fun of it, we'll rewrite this negative 19 plus 17. That's that rule for subtraction. In the denominator, I have negative 18 plus 13. So in my numerator, I'm going to have a negative 2. And in the denominator, I'm going to have a negative 5. Negative divided by negative is positive, and so I would write my slope as positive 2/5. You can write your negative sign if you have a negative answer either out in front of the whole fraction, or you can attach it to the numerator. If you have 2 negatives, you want to make it a positive. Questions. I'm very quiet today. All right, your turn. I'm tired. Y'all get to find the slope of this. I'm going to actually give you about 60 seconds to find this slope. And then I'm going to call randomly on somebody to tell me what the slope is or what you think the slope is. And if you get it wrong, we'll work it together. It will be okay. I promise it won't be the end of the world. I'm even going to help you out. All right, let's see who I can pick on that I haven't picked on yet today. Reese, you're next on my list. I know y'all just pop up in random orders. So what did you get for the difference in the y values?
Well, I overall got 9/0, but I know that's not right.
Oh, but it's close. Okay, let's tell me what you put down for your difference in your y's.
I put 1 plus 8,
Okay,
but
why
I
did
thought
you
it
put?
was supposed to be 1
Okay,
minus 8.
yeah, it should be 1 minus 8. You got that, okay? And then in the denominator, though, you had that part right because you had
It's
negative
negative
2, I
0.
bet minus negative 2, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so 1 minus 8 is negative 7, okay?
I guess it's -4
Do
on
what
the
now?
bottom. -4 on the bottom.
Ah, it's not. Watch this. Watch very carefully. This becomes negative 2 minus this negative becomes plus.
Uh,
Yes? Ah, so that's why I said you were so close. You just had the wrong numerator. So negative 7, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. We're good. That's why we're doing this. If y'all could all do this, then you wouldn't need me. All right? So what do I get if I have a negative 7 over 0? Is that 0 or is that undefined?
Undefined.
It is undefined. Exactly. Excellent. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, right. And so both of those are super easy mistakes to make. The difference is the big thing. So you're always going to put that minus, and even if you happen to have minus and negative, then just go back and think about rewriting that. Okay. The other thing I want to tell you about this particular problem is, what do you notice about the two ordered pairs? Can somebody tell me something they notice about the two ordered pairs? Do they have anything in common? Do the two ordered pairs have anything in common? Well, Reese, I'm going to continue to pick on you for this one. What do these two ordered pairs have in common?
-2.
They both have a negative 2. That is the x value, okay? That's it. They both have an x is equal to negative 2. Guys, if you have the same x value for several ordered pairs, that tells me that my equation is actually x is equal to negative 2, which, remember, is that vertical line, and a vertical line has a slope which is undefined. So sometimes it's not just being independent and trying to remember. Sometimes you can put things together to help you remember. So I don't want you just to feel like you have to memorize 0 on the bottom is undefined. I would love for you to start to recognize, hey, these two things have the same exact x value. That means it's an x is equal to equation. That means I have a vertical line. That means my slope is undefined. So you're putting a whole bunch of amazing things together, and you're building this process, which is going to get you more than just through the next quiz or test. Okay? All right. So with that in mind, you get 60 seconds to do the next one, and then I'm going to call on the next very unsuspecting soul. So you never know because you're not necessarily going to be called in alphabetical order. Okay? So I'm going to label your x values. And I'm going to label your y values for you. And I'm going to ask you to find the slope. And I'm so going to pick on somebody else. Okay, I think my next unsuspecting soul is going to be Cody.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so tell me what you put in the numerator here when you found your slope.
-10 minus -10.
Yep. And what's in the denominator?
-5 minus 3.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to start with the denominator. What did you get in the denominator?
-8.
Yep, -8. What'd you get in the numerator?
0.
Yep, that's a 0 because this is negative 10 plus 10. And so that means this one is going to be 0 for my slope. Okay. Did anybody happen to recognize that the y values were the same? Yep, if you did, the equation is actually y is equal to negative 10. That means that it was a horizontal line, and a horizontal line has a slope of 0. I know. I think that's super cool. Sorry. You have the misfortune of me thinking that it's like super cool, so I get to share that with you. You're a captive audience, kind of. Okay. All right. So now I'm not given a point, I'm given a graph, and I'm asking you to find the slope of this line. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to tell me, is the slope positive, negative, 0, or undefined? So I want somebody, you can type it into the chat, is the slope positive, negative, 0, or undefined? And everybody can answer me for that matter. I don't care. Positive, negative, 0, or undefined. It is positive. Excellent. So, okay. So it is a positive slope because it is rising. That's going to be huge. If you have a multiple choice, you could eliminate everything that was negative, okay? Because you recognize that it's a positive slope. That's big. Okay. So how do I actually find the slope? Well, my suggestion, there's 2 different ways you can do this. My suggestion is to pick 2 points, any 2 points that you can actually see that are defined with integers. I would pick these 2 because they're pretty easy. This is the point 0, 3, and this is the point negative 2, 0. All right. And now we can use those to find the slope. So the difference in the y's, and it doesn't matter which one I use. So I'm going to use, this is my 2's. So I'm going to have 3 minus 0 over 0 minus negative 2. And this is going to be 3 over positive 2. And if I accidentally got a negative in there, I know it would be wrong because I know I have a positive slope. The other way you can do this is if you can find these 2 points, you always move from left to right. But to get from this point to this, don't count these guys that don't cross lines. Those are missing. I can count literally rise up 1, 2, 3, over, run, 1, 2. Sometimes that's a little bit harder to do. So this is my run of positive 2, and this is my rise of positive 3. Sometimes the counting part is a little bit harder to do, and so I like using the points, but you can do it either way. Some people like the graphs and like to count. So questions. Okay, sweet. All right. Next one. So this one says to graph the line that goes through the point 1, 3 and has a slope of 2. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is tell you to write this slope as 2 over 1. All right, because I need a rise and I need a run. Okay, so because they're both positive, this is a positive number, they're both positive. This is 2 up and this is 1 right. And that's going to be very helpful if you identify those. Okay. So when you want to graph a line that goes through a point and you know the slope, you start, very first thing you do is to graph the point. So I'm going to graph the point. So I'm going to come over here, 0, 0, and I'm going to go to 1, and I'm going to go up to 3, and here is my point 1, 3. That's the very first thing you're going to do. From that point, you have to go from that point, you're going to go up 2 and right 1. So up 1, 2, and right 1. And that's your second point, okay? And so you can draw the line that connects these points, and there is my graph. That is not a very good picture. Let's try that again. Okay. Much better. And there's my line. Okay. Lovely thing about my labs is it will draw the line for you. You just have to plot the points, and then it goes whoosh, and it makes a beautiful line. It's amazing. Questions, questions, questions. All right. Y'all are like way too quiet today. We may have to like play a game or something. Oh my God. All right. So, next one. Graph the line, goes through this point, has an undefined slope. Okay. Somebody tell me what kind of line has an undefined slope? Goes up, goes down, is horizontal, or is vertical with an undefined slope? Undefined slope. Rises, falls, vertical, horizontal. Oh man, I have to call on somebody. Brandon, help me out here. Undefined. Somebody, Jayla answered. She beat you to it. Okay, you're saved. So excellent. So it is a vertical line. Okay, so the undefined slope tells me I have a vertical line. So a vertical line means it's going to go up and down, right? So we're going to plot the point 1, 3. Okay, and literally on Miles Plus, you would probably plot a second point. And what's going to happen is you get this super nifty line, and it goes just like this. And that's it. Was not where it was supposed to go. Sorry. Right? And there is my beautiful equation graph. Very good. Excellent. See, you didn't even need anything else. Okay. Now we're going to be experts at this. Okay. So now, we want to talk about some other lovely things. So sometimes we're given the equation in what's called slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept form is what I think of as the best way to graph. Because we've seen that if we know what the slope is, and we know what a point is, that we can graph the equation. So better yet, if we know the point that's the y-intercept, that's really nice. And if we know the slope, then we have a point and a slope, and we can graph. So the slope-intercept form of a linear equation is the best graphing form you could possibly hope for. It's also a form that's very useful later on in algebra when we talk about things called functions. That slope-intercept form is going to be super friendly. So we're going to talk about this slope-intercept form, and what we want to do with these first problems is we simply want to take a linear equation and we want to put it into slope-intercept form so that we can identify the slope and the y-intercept. How are we going to do that? Well, if slope-intercept form, another way to say this, slope-intercept form means the equation is solved for y. So we solve the equation for y. So that means we get y is equal to something. Here's the big things. This little guy right here, this number in front of the x, is going to be my slope. And this number out here at the end is going to be the y part of my y-intercept. So it's going to make my ordered pair right here. And the number in front of the x is going to be my slope. Okay? So that's how we find our slope and our y-intercept, by putting an equation in slope-intercept form. So we start with 3y is equal to 6x minus 9. And the first thing to do to solve for y is to divide everything by 3, because I need to get this y by itself. So I'm going to divide each and every piece by 3. And so my equation is going to look like this. Y is equal to 2x minus 3. Okay? Now, here's what I need to happen. We need to identify the slope of this line, and we need to identify the y-intercept for this line. Okay? So the y-intercept can come in two different ways to write it. I personally like the ordered pair version of it, which is 0, something. And sometimes the problem will simply say, what is it? And you can just write in -3. It will tell you if it wants an ordered pair. If it wants an ordered pair, So this is an ordered pair, is in this form. Okay. Brandon, you got saved by the bell a while ago, so I'm going to pick on you now. So tell me, what is the y-intercept now that I have my equation in slope-intercept form? What is going to go here in the second part of my ordered pair? You can either answer me or you can type in the answer. Brandon, are you with us?
Also, what you say?
I know, right? Sometimes
I've been
I get
cooking
just sense when
breakfast.
people aren't paying attention to me. I said, what is the y-intercept? If I have an equation written like this, what is the y-intercept for this equation? Well, you were there, and then you disappeared on me again. Okay, I think Brandon's gone to sleep on us. All right, so let me see. Hannah, can you help me out? Can you tell me what the y-intercept is for this equation? I have a bad feeling I got folks who have gone to sleep on me. Hannah, you can either type in the answer or you can answer me. Or not. All right, let's try somebody else. Raven, can you help me out? What is the y-intercept? I have this really bad feeling I've got folks who just totally disappeared on me. Okay, that's okay.
No, my screen had froze. I couldn't type the.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, so tell me what the y-intercept is, Ms. Raven. So when I've got it into this form, this number out here is going to be my y-intercept. So what number matches up with that one on here?
Wait, I can't see the screen.
Oh no, that's terrible.
I can hear you, I just can't see you.
Oh, okay, well, you can hear me. Okay, so if I gave you y is equal to 2x minus 3, what's my y-intercept?
Can you say that one more time?
Y is equal to 2x minus 3. What's my y-intercept?
Wouldn't it be -1?
If I've got a 2x minus 3, I'm not going to collect those together. My y-intercept is actually the number that's at the very end of my equation, and it's the one without the x, and so my y-intercept is going to be a -3. Okay?
Oh, I subtracted those together, my bad.
Yep, no, don't subtract them, just find that actual number. Yep, thank you, Brianna. I actually see that. Oh, yes, several of y'all answered me over there, so y'all are great. Okay, so somebody tell me what the slope is then, if I have it in this form.
-3/2.
I would love that to work, but it's going to actually be easier than that. You don't even have to divide anything. It's kind of sitting here looking at us. Don't have the x on it, you just have the 2. So yep, it's just a slope of 2, okay? So once I get my equation, is anybody else who can't see the screen? I know Raven said you couldn't, so are y'all having trouble seeing the screen? If you are, like, type me a message and say, hey, I can't see your screen, kind of thing. So we may be having some technical issues, hopefully not. Oh, you're good. It's fine. I mean, I get it. So I know there's like a lag time in here. That's the nice thing on the video. If you watch that, if I remember to solve it to record it, it does go a little bit faster, but it's fine. You're good. Okay, you're just here. That's fine. All right. So when you take an equation and you can solve it for y, look on this. If you can ever get it into this form where y is equal to stuff plus x or stuff times x plus or minus something else, so whatever is in front of the x is my slope, and whatever number is out here at the end is my y-intercept. Okay, and that's all we're trying to find here. So let's look at the second one here, and I won't pick on y'all too bad. So x minus 4y is equal to 2, all right? And so I'm trying again to solve this for y. So I have negative 4y is equal to negative x plus 2. So I'm moving that x to the other side by changing this operation. And so then I'm going to divide every term up here by negative 4 because I need this to be y equals. And so if I divide everything up here by negative 4, I'm going to have y is equal to, and I'm going to actually write this negative x over negative 4. I'm going to take kind of an extra step in here, and then 2 over negative 4. And now I'm going to simplify this. So this is actually just x over 4. Most of the time we don't like to write it like that, so that's okay. And then minus, because of a negative and a positive, and this simplifies to 1/2. Now, here's a secret that I'm going to tell you. You want to rewrite this. So x over 4 is the same thing as 1/4 times x. So I have 1/4 times x minus 1/2, all right? So now, at this point, what I want to do is we're going to look at this, and Leilani, I'm going to pick on you. So what is my slope for this equation? Can you see my screen okay? Hang on. I think I've got you muted. I can't unmute you.
Sorry, I couldn't get it unmuted.
It's
Okay.
So what is the slope here?
The slope,
Remember, it's going to be matching up with our m from up here. So if I think about
would
this,
be, well, 1/4.
yep, that's it. That's exactly it.
Okay.
1/4. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's just that number there in front. That's perfect.
Okay.
Yep, that is all. That is it. And so then my y-intercept, we're actually going to write as the ordered pair. But the only thing I'm getting from my equation, so I have my 0 for my x value, what I'm getting from my equation is that negative 1/2. And so that would be my y-intercept. Okay? So literally we're just pulling those numbers from that format. We're trying to take, it's kind of like having a template for something and setting it down on top, and where the things line up, that's where you're going to pick up those values. All right. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what other kind of fun stuff we can do. We can just do those things. Okay. All right. So we can also, when you talk about lines, you could talk about lines that have a relationship between two lines. And so the two most common relationships that we have between two lines are two lines can be parallel to each other, or two lines can be perpendicular to each other. And physically, I want to talk about what that means, and then we'll talk about what it means algebraically. Physically, parallel lines are like the sides of railroad tracks. They don't ever intersect. They're like the things that go down like this, and you've got two lines, and they're running along beside each other, and they never ever cross. So parallel lines look like this. They can be sideways, they can be this way, they can be up and down, they can be this way, it doesn't matter. As long as they don't ever intersect. So because they never intersect, they have the same slope, okay? So if you ever find two lines with the same slope, that means you have two lines which are parallel to each other. Perpendicular lines, on the other hand, intersect and form right angles. They actually form 4 right angles. And you find lots of perpendicular lines in your house, for example. You have parallel lines also, okay? Of course, if you live in Starkville, your parallel lines may kind of intersect because, you know, like my house moves, so because of the ground. So sometimes things strange happen. But perpendicular lines, like I said, they're like the corners. So if you have two walls that come together, those are perpendicular lines, okay? So what's special about those perpendicular line slopes is they have what we call opposite reciprocal slopes. So for example, if the slope for line 1 was 1/2, then the slope for line 2, if they were perpendicular, would be negative 2/1 or negative 2, okay? So these two lines would be perpendicular. Now, those two types of special, they're just special types of relationships between lines. And so sometimes it's helpful in geometry to know when we have parallel lines or perpendicular lines. So trying to tie a couple of different subjects together here. It's important to know the algebra behind that. And so to be able to look at two lines based on their slopes and say, hey, these two lines are perpendicular, or hey, these two lines are parallel, or hey, these are just two really nice lines that don't have any special relationship. That's kind of important. So to do that, what we're going to do here is we've got line A and line B, and we want to find the slopes of those lines. And then we want to determine if there is a special relationship between those lines. So we'll start by finding, and we're using the formula for slope, we want to find the slope of line A. And so again, I'm going to suggest that you identify your x's and your y's. And so the same kind of thing we did a while ago, and this is just really excellent practice with this. So my difference in the y's is going to be -2 minus 10. That's my rise or my y's over the difference in my x's. And so I have -2 minus -5. So in the numerator here, I'm going to end up with a -12. And in the denominator of my slope, I'm going to end up with a +3. Okay, I'm making that plus a 5. And this actually simplifies to -4 or -4 over 1, whichever way you want to write it. So my slope for this line is -4. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to find the slope for line B. All right. And so the slope for line B is going to be, once again, I'm going to identify these pieces. And so I have x1 and x2, and I have my y1 and my y2. And so the difference in my y's is -1 minus -4. And the difference in my x's is 21 minus 9. And so my numerator is going to turn out to be 3, because I have -1 plus 4, so it's going to give me a +3. And 21 minus 9 is going to be 12, and 3 over 12 simplifies to 1/4. Look at my two slopes. This one has a slope of -4. This one has a slope of +1/4. Can anybody tell me, are they parallel? Are they perpendicular? Or are they just neither one of those? You can either type it or you can tell me. Parallel, perpendicular, or neither. And I will give you a minute to catch up to my computer. They are perpendicular. Excellent. Yay, I got multiple answers. Okay, so they are perpendicular. And that's all you've got to do for these, okay? Find the slope, look at the relationship. If they were the same, they'd be parallel. Like this, they're perpendicular. If we had -4 and -1/4, they would be neither. So in order to be perpendicular, they do have to have opposite signs, and they have to be flipped at each other. So reciprocals. All right. Excellent. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing, except this time we've got to find the slope using our other methods for finding the slope. So we're once again looking to see if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So we need to be able to identify the slopes of these lines. Because we have the equations, we have to solve each equation for y. So we're going to find the slopes by solving for y. So I'm going to make a note on here. So we're going to find the slope by solving each equation for y. So we're going to find the slope by solving for y. So I'm going to start with line C over here. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. That gives me -y is equal to -6x plus 4. Now, just kind of keep in mind that when I move things across that equal sign, the other way to think about this is I'm changing the sign. So as I move 6x over here to the right-hand side, I make it a negative 6x, okay? To get y by itself, I have to multiply everything up here by a negative 1. So I have a positive y is equal to a positive 6x minus 4. Or you can think of simply changing the sign on everything, but you do have to change the sign on all of the pieces, okay? So I'm moving 6x, and then I'm changing this to positive y. The slope of this line is, again, it is this number that is in front of my x. So here is my slope. So the slope of this line is 6. Okay? So I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the second equation. I'm going to solve this for y. When I move my negative 36x across the equal sign, I change signs. And so when I do that, I get 6y is equal to positive 36x minus 7. Then to get y by itself, I have that 6 there, and so I need to divide each piece over here by 6. 36 divided by 6 gives me 6x minus 7 over 6. Okay? So to get from here to here, I divided both sides by 6. Okay? So again, it's the number that's in front of my, the number that's in front of my x, that is my slope. And so the slope for this line is also 6. Two lines which have the same slope are parallel. Questions? So two different ways to find the slopes there. One by using points, one by looking at equations, solving them for x, but still the same end goal. What do I have? What's the relationship between these two lines? If I were to graph these two lines, they would end up on a graph and they would be running along next to each other, never intersecting each other, just kind of running along beside each other. All right. So let's talk about finding the equations. So I showed you the slope-intercept formula, the y is equal to mx plus b, and that's huge, and that's what we're going to start off by talking about. We can write equations. So we've gone from having equations to being able to graph those equations, from taking an equation and finding the slope of that line. Being able to find the slope and the y-intercept are huge in terms of graphing. And so now we want to talk about what if we have all of this information, but what we really need is that equation, okay? And because we need to be able to find some other things having to do with that. So we're going to be given a y-intercept, and we're going to be given the slope of the line. And so we're going to take these two things together and we're going to backtrack. So rather than taking the equation and finding the slope and the intercept, we're going to take the intercept and the slope and rewrite them in terms of the equation. So for this particular problem, we are given the point 0, 4. You do need to be able to identify this as being the y-intercept. Why do I know it's the y-intercept, you might be asking? It's because the x value is 0 and there is a number for y. So if the x value of an ordered pair is 0, this is going to be a y-intercept, okay? So we have the y-intercept. The y-intercept is our b in our y is equal to mx plus b. Our slope is negative 5. So my equation is simply y equals negative 5x plus 4. That's the answer. You don't have to do anything else to that. That's it. Y is equal to, we stuff in that m value for that negative 5 for m, and we stuff in that 4 for our b, and we have y is equal to mx plus b. I'm going to give you 60 seconds. I may not pick on you, but I'm going to give you 60 seconds to use the next slope and intercept to write the equation of the line. just like I did. This one just has fractions in it. We're going to keep the fractions in it. Fractions are great. We love fractions. I would tell you to send me your answer privately if you don't want to share it with everybody else, but the fractions are kind of hard to type, so you don't have to do that. You can if you want to. Okay, so hopefully you all now have y is equal to 5/8 times x minus 3/4. That's it. That's all you need to do. You could have written this as 5x over 8 if that makes you really happy. It doesn't matter to me which way you write it. I would probably do this first one, 5/8 times x. I just like that format better, but it doesn't matter. The x can either go with the 5 or it can go beside the 5/8. That's all you got to do. That is it. You have now written equations of lines. That's amazing. There you go. You got this. Thank you very much. Yours is lovely. So, spot on. Where'd you go? Okay. All right. Next. Okay, so sometimes we don't have the y-intercept. We just have another random point, okay? Sometimes we have two random points and no slope, and so we have to do lots of work. But if you have just some random point and you have the slope, you can still write the equation of line. And personally, this is my favorite formula for writing the equation of line, just because, I don't know, you can use it for everything, okay? So even if the point you have is your y-intercept, you can go back to this one. So if you only want to memorize one formula for writing the equation of a line, this is the one you want to memorize, okay? This is called the point-slope formula. And the reason it's called the point-slope formula, you may not like math, but we are very descriptive. So even if you don't like math, we are still very descriptive. It is called the point-slope formula because we use a point and a slope. Therefore, the point-slope formula, okay? It's excellent. All right. So the point-slope formula looks like this. It is y minus a y value. So y sub 1 means I'm going to plug a number in here, is equal to the slope times, and I have to put a parentheses, x minus an x value, okay? Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to highlight the places where we're actually going to put a number in, okay? So the y1, we're going to replace with the y value in the point, okay? The x1, we're going to replace with the x value in the point, okay? And then the m, we're going to replace with whatever the slope value is, all right? So I hope the color coding doesn't disturb you. I like the colors. It's just very visual to me, and so I'm sorry you had to get the very visual math teacher who thinks that I need to color code everything. So I don't think they let me play with crayons enough in school. I don't know, maybe something. So I just like the colors. All right, so here we go. We have an x value, a y value, and a slope, okay? So here is my slope. There's my slope. I'm going to put that in my formula in just a second. Here is my y value. I'm going to put that in. And here is my x value. All right? And so let's do this. So we have y minus 5, y minus 5 equals slope, -9, parentheses, x minus x value. Beautiful. That's it. That is the point slope form of the equation of a line. Okay? So we can label this as the point slope form of our line. Okay? That's it. That's all we got to do. Now, if you want the slope intercept form, okay, so to get the slope intercept, and sometimes you're going to need the slope intercept form. To get the slope intercept form, we're going to take a couple of extra steps, all right? So I'm going to make a note over here. So, all right, somebody's ahead of me. So yes, you're probably correct. So to get the slope intercept form, we're going to do this. So we have y minus 5 is equal to negative 9x plus 27, right? Because I'm distributing my negative 9 through here. And then I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And I have negative 9x plus 32. And that is my slope intercept form. Okay? Excellent. Right? Questions? We're going to do several of these. In fact, this is one of the concepts that you will use in, okay, so maybe if you're taking statistics next, you won't use this, but you will use this in trig, and you will use this in algebra, and you will use this in trig, and you will use this in business calculus or pre-calculus or whatever other classes that you're going to take having to do with math. We love to write equations of lines. One of our favorite things to do. Okay. All right. Let's rock this. We got this. Y'all are amazing today. Either that or you're just too quiet. Okay. So the next one says find the equation of the line that goes through this point and has this slope. Same thing. We're doing exactly the same thing. Okay. So we're going to go through this again. We've got y minus our y value. Here's my y value. Okay. Is equal to the slope, here's my slope, okay, times x minus my x value, okay? So this is, again, the point slope form. Now, again, if I wanted to graph this, I've got my point, I've got my slope, I could do that. If I wanted to be able to compare this to something else, sometimes it's just really helpful to have that slope intercept form. And so it's really very important that you be able to go from one form to the other. We looked a while ago at some problems. I didn't tell you that, but they were in standard form and we put them in slope intercept form. Slope intercept form is kind of that universal form, especially for graphing and for being able to compare things. Point slope form is an amazing way to write those equations. So I'm going to show you how to clean this up and to get it into slope intercept form. So to get to slope intercept form, we want to do the following. So we do want to clean this up, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean this y minus stuff up. So we're going to make this y plus 2, okay, is equal to 1/3 times x minus 1. Now, at this point, I'm going to do a little bit of mathemagic, all right? And by that, I mean I'm going to get rid of the fraction because most of you guys don't like fractions, and so I'm going to get rid of the fraction. We'll bring it back, I promise. Sorry, we'll bring it back. So, but to do that, it just helps me to be able to clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to multiply everything up here by 3, right? And I'm going to distribute this. So this becomes 3y plus 6 is equal to 3/3 times x minus 1, right? And I'm going to continue to clean this up. 3y plus 6 is equal to, well, 3 over 3 is 1, so I just have x minus 1. I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. I'll actually write that in here, subtracting 6 from both sides leaves me with 3y is equal to x minus 7. And then dividing everything by 3, I get y is equal to 1/3 x minus 7/3. And this is my slope-intercept form. So just know it's the same exact equation, it's just dressed differently. Okay? Sometimes we need to dress up and dress down. So sometimes you got to put shoes on to go outside. Sometimes you can teach from home in your pajamas, but you're still the same thing. Questions? Questions. All right. So this next one, it says find the equation of the line that goes through this point and is parallel to the line we're given. This is probably the hardest question we've done so far because it makes us do a couple of things together. In order to write the equation in point slope, using the point and slope formula, we have to have a point and we have to have a slope. And in this particular problem, we're only given a point, okay? So that means we need to figure out what the slope is. The slope is based on the fact that this line is parallel to another one. And a while ago, we talked about parallel lines having a special relationship, and that was that they have the same slope. So this is a multi-step problem. So step number 1, and we're going to go through these step by step, is we need to find the slope. Find the slope of this line. Why? Because it's parallel to the one that we want to talk about. So we're going to find the slope of this line. We're going to find the slope of this line by doing what we did earlier, which is solving for y. So we're going to have negative 5y is equal to negative 4x plus 7. Okay? Right? And now we're going to divide everything by negative 5. So I have y is equal to negative 4 divided by negative 5 times x plus 7 divided by negative 5. And now I'm going to clean this up and make this 4/5 x minus 7/5. Okay. So the slope then of this line is 4/5. Okay. So that's the first step. I know this said this was a long one. Okay. So the second step in this is we're going to take the slope of 4/5 and the point of 4, negative 3, and the formula y minus the y value is equal to the slope times x minus the x value, and we're going to write the equation. Okay. So I have y minus my negative 3 is equal to the slope times x minus 4. And I'm going to clean this up and make it y plus 3 is equal to 4/5 times x minus 4. And it doesn't tell me to write this in slope-intercept form, so you can leave it like this. As long as it doesn't tell you to do anything else to it, you can leave it alone. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I'm going to let y'all catch up. And I'm going to see who all is still with me. So if you will either reply to me in a chat or reply to me verbally while you're writing this down. Mark, are you still here with me?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Perfect. Cody, are you still here with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Wonderful. Sydney, are you still here? Brandon? Brandon? Chelsea? Okay. Madison?
I'm here.
Is that Madison?
Yeah.
Nico, you still here? I know you're still here. You're still chatting with me over here. Bill. Raven, I know you've been having some connectivity issues. Are you still with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Hannah, did you manage to get us all together? I know you were having some connectivity issues. You can chat with me if you need to. Perfect, thank you. Jayla, you're still here? Jayla. Yes, you're still here. Excellent. Reese.
I'm still here.
Okay. Aaliyah. Yes. Okay. Leilani, I see you are still here with us, and Brianna. Okay, perfect. Okay, guys. We had some folks who disappeared. So, and once again, if you're going to get a bonus quiz for being here, you're going to be here. So, and if you're not here, then you're not here. So, and if you disappear, you're not here. So, I am actually going to stop because I can kind of sense from just listening and not listening to y'all that we only have a couple more problems left. But what I would really, really like to do is stop here. You can probably finish all of this homework with the material that you have without the last couple of problems. But what I would really like to do tomorrow is give you a chance to finish up the homework that's due today, which is homework 1 and quiz 1. And so you're not kind of stressed over that. This is a lot of information that I've thrown at you today. And so I would like for you to kind of go back and just look back through these notes. Try some of the homework problems in homework number 2 once you finish homework number 1. And then tomorrow morning we'll come in here and I'll finish up this material. And I'll give you an opportunity to ask any question you want to about anything we've done so far, whether it's the material from chapter 2 that we've just finished that you're still working on homework, if it's questions from homework and quiz R and homework and quiz number 1. If it's anything you want to ask me, I'm going to let you ask questions about before, because your test is on Monday. And so I know I'm going to give you a chance to ask some kind of last minute questions, but I would like to spend a large portion of the time tomorrow answering questions that you might have over these previous homework problems. But like I said, I feel like I've kind of thrown a whole bunch of stuff at you this morning. And so I want you to breathe now, and I want you to take this back and kind of process it. Finish up the first homework number 1 and that quiz number 1, and start looking at homework number 2 so that we can process through that, and then we'll finish up this material tomorrow morning. So I'm going to stop here. And if you want to stick on the line and ask me some other questions, please feel free to do so. I'm not going anywhere. I will be right here. Or if you want to drop me emails or you want to call me in my office, you're welcome to do that. And I'll try to help you get through this stuff. But I know this is a lot of stuff. So this is probably the longest day that we have is this equation stuff. So anyway, okay. So if you want to go work on your own and just come back, you're welcome to do that. If you want to, run away and have a cup of coffee because you're falling asleep, then that's okay too. So I thank y'all for sticking around and sticking with us, and I will see you either later today or tomorrow. Okay? All right. Y'all are amazing.